Pads are popping, battles are brewing, and the smoke is starting to clear on some key position races in Madison. Week 1 of fall camp is in the books, and we've got two of the best insiders here to break it all down. I'm Rajiv, he's Justin. Here we go.
Welcome to the Bucky Report, your destination for all things Wisconsin Badgers. Authentic takes.
Oh my God.
Game analysis.
Touchdown Badgers! Ring one up!
And discussion from the fan perspective.
Woo-hoo!
Thanks for joining us and on Wisconsin.
Welcome to the Bucky Report. We are your hosts, Rajiv and Justin, back together on a Sunday evening to talk about all things Wisconsin Badgers. On today's show, Week 1 of football practice is officially in the books, and we have not one but two special guests who were at practice all week and who are here to tell you everything you need to know. We're going to talk position battles, who's shining, who's still got work to do, and how this team is really shaping up now that the pads are on. We're also going to do some lightning round superlatives at the end of the show with these fine gentlemen. You can find us on YouTube and wherever you get your podcast. If you like what we're doing, hit that subscribe button so you know when we make new content, pushing towards 2,000 subs before football season. So first of all, I'm in a lake house in Indiana, looking outside at a lake right now, which is cool. Very different background to what you normally will see from me. We have got some awesome guests. First, Justin, how was your weekend? How are you doing? Before we come to our guests, how are you, my friend?
I'm doing good. I was lazy and useless this weekend. Basically hit the gym a couple of times and did nothing. So it was great. It was everything I wanted it to be.
There you go. There you go. We have one of our, of course, awesome regular guests returning.
The Bucky Report proudly welcomes Nick Osen from 247 Sports.
Nick, we got to play the intro for you. How you doing, my friend? Welcome back.
Guys, I appreciate it. I'm doing great. Always great to be on with you guys. My guy Coco, he and I go way back. And let's be honest, guys, as fun as these shows have been, April, May, June, we've got legitimate football to talk about now. So it's always good.
It's great to do the things that we get to do and talk football season all year round and talk all kinds of stuff. But boy, is it nice when we actually have something specific to get into. And because we actually have something specific to get into, we wanted to load up tonight. We're bringing the all-star crew, bringing everybody. So obviously Nick has been here several times, really, really good friend of the show. And we've got a Bucky Report debut tonight, making his debut on the Bucky Report. You know him from B5Q, from Badger Blitz, from all the different things he's done in the Badger world. And of course, now doing something different, which we're going to talk about. Welcome, Jake Kocorowski. How are you, my friend? Welcome to the Bucky Report. We're glad to have you with us. And how are you today, first of all?
Doing great, man. Hey, thank you guys for having me on. This is great. I really appreciate the warm words and just being with y'all. I'm doing great. Long day in Platteville, but hey, back home and just it's great talking football again. That's not just hypotheticals or whatnot. I mean, you're just about less than 3 weeks away, right around there from game number 1, or about 3 weeks, I should say. Yeah. So yeah, we're all ready for it, and it's it's crazy just to see. I mean, and I also feel like, I guess, Thanos from like Marvel, where like the number of outlets I have, it's like my infinity gauntlet right there. It's like just add this one more self-imposed stone. I just got to add a couple more, and I'll just complete the set. Exactly.
Yeah, it's gonna be great. Jake, you've got a new project going on. A new thing you're working on, Badger Observer. Tell everyone all about it and where they can find what you're doing.
Yeah, no. So with Badger Observer, it's first off, thanks for letting me promote it real quick. I've been at, you mentioned Bucky's Fifth Quarter, Badger Blitz, the Wisconsin State Journal, Badger Extra. I appreciate all my time there. But, with the changing media market, things changed for me in late March. And through just thinking in the past few months, it turned into, hey, let's try something on my own. Like, I've had 13 years of experience covering Wisconsin football. I've done Wisconsin athletics too, with men's basketball, with volleyball, other things in terms of covering other teams with certain series when I was at Badger Extra. So I was like, hey, time to take a chance on myself. And so that's why I launched Badger Observer. It's a Substack newsletter, subscription-based. I'm covering Wisconsin football, just like my boy Osen over there, along with covering Wisconsin volleyball, which I think is an underserved beat, especially with a powerhouse and a blue blood, just like Wisconsin volleyball is, especially underneath Kelly Sheffield. And also, of course, I've dabbled in recruiting since 2014 and talking to recruits, and that's part of my, notch on my belt, if you will, in terms of the experience I have. And so my goal and my mission is to, and Nick does great work at 24/7, at 247. So this is buddy, this Payne and my old editor, John McNamara, Colton and Jim do great work at Badger Extra, among others on that beat, on the beat. My goal is to tell unique stories, and, I have a alternative kind of adept voice from my time covering 3 different coaching regimes and many different NFL players, that guys have gone to the NFL, and some teams that have gone on to do some special things. And so my goal is to do that for those 2 sports plus recruiting. And it's great where you click that QR code right now, and I try to make this, and Nick knows this too, there's a lot of great coverage of Wisconsin athletics, and what I'm trying to do is also, like, we all know it's tough with the economy at times, and I believe reporters need to get paid, but we also things need to be, I would say, as cost effective as possible. And so right now, first year through the 29th of August, your first year subscription is $50. Otherwise, it's going to be $7 a month, or a nice $69 a year, which is still a good cost in my eyes, and aiming to deliver 4 to 5 newsletters a week. I know right now I'm doing one every day with fall camp, just to load up on the content, because it also justifies me going to practice. But yeah, it's been a great start so far. We're building up, and yeah, I've appreciated all the warm words and support so far.
Yeah, and if you're listening to on a podcast after this live show airs, I will put the link in the description to Badger Observer for Coco. So yeah, thanks for joining us, man, and good luck on everything you're doing. And of course, the more Badger voices that are out there, the better, which is fantastic. All right, boys, practice week 1. It's in the book. Live. Thank you so much for all the stuff. And our good friend Eric Dock, first of all, can we please make sure there are no conflicts with Philly sports teams when scheduling future Bucky reports? Eric, no, we cannot.
Yeah,
because I actively do not like Philadelphia sports.
let's just push him to become a Brewer fan. So I've been trying to do this with Rajiv, who for God knows what reason is a Cubs fan.
We're not going to go there.
I'm
a little bit pissed off.
Oh no.
This is the problem. We knew this was going to happen. We knew that we were going to fall. We knew that the Brewers were going to catch us. I don't even want to talk baseball because I'm very furious about the trade deadline and our lack of anything. But I digress. Billy Edwards. We're going to start with the quarterback. We're going to start with the position that doesn't really have a lot of battles, so to speak. Nick, I'm going to come to you first. Break down sort of overall thoughts on what you saw from Billy Edwards this week and the quarterback play in general.
Yeah, Rajiv, I think it's a lot of, really what I expected and what we saw in the spring. I think that I noticed right away, I think a lot of us felt this way, nearly a picture-perfect fit within this Grimes offense. I think he can make every throw. I think his decision-making has been better here these first few days than maybe in spring. And it wasn't bad by any means, but I remember just a bad interception or 2 then. I think he's been, really accurate, good decision-making, a couple great deep balls midweek, certainly. A couple I loved were, maybe like a fake or evading pressure a little bit, knocking a couple guys along the sideline, which I think really stood out. And just the overall grasp, really, guys, that he has on the entire offense and the team. I mean, spoke with him way back, December, January, and I felt that really stood out. Now, overall QB play, guys, and I'd love to hear, Coco's thoughts too. I know, Rajiv, when you pass it around, look, I've been impressed with Simmons, quite honestly. I didn't know exactly what to expect, really from the SIU transfer. I think that he's been solid. Again, not perfect. Nobody necessarily has, but quickly grasped this offense, has made some really good intermediate throws. I think good decision-making. Danny O'Neal has shown his flashes. And I remember one day, again, he's still growing, and then I'm making sure to choose my words carefully, especially with young guys, because I know people really jumped on some of those trains last year, Justin. But I think Carter Smith has shown a couple of those tools that I was looking for a bit more often than we saw in the spring, which is to be expected.
Coco, how do you feel like Billy Edwards has sort of taken to the Grimes system so far? And also give me a word on Danny O'Neill. How did he look this week?
Yeah, you look at someone like Billy Edwards Jr. and he is I agree with Nick in the fact that he, is really much kind of the prototype, the archetype of what you want within, or that Jeff Grimes wants within this scheme. He's a taller quarterback, but he's also athletic. You saw that during the week where I wrote about it on the Observer. One of the new practice takeaways was that there's a mobility in the pocket. Yeah, he can do some running. He had 13 rushing touchdowns at Maryland, but what he does in the pocket, especially with this NFL style system that they're trying to run, where you're going to see play action a little bit, he can move around in the he can move around that pocket to extend plays, and that's what they want out of this offense from the quarterback position. You see that with Danny O'Neill too. And Edwards, going back to Edwards real quick before I get to O'Neill, today he had a couple of interceptions around like deeper in it. They're doing some sort of, it appeared to be like red zone type work within like Skelly drill, which is just basically 7-on-7 and then team 11-on-11 period. A couple of interceptions that, one was to Ricardo Hallman, made a great play on the ball. It was a hard throw, to the far right of the sideline by the right pylon. And it was supposed to be for Vinny Anthony, got picked off by Hallman. Good play there. The other was during team period against, and Austin Brown just jumped in and grabbed it for a nice interception there. So, there's that, but, even today he still countered that by having back-to-back touchdown passes to tight ends Lance Mason and Tucker Ashcraft. And then he also made a good touchdown throw to Vinny Anthony during 11-on-11. So, right around the kind of the red zone type period. So, it's not all bad by Edwards by any stretch, but yeah, he's got the arm talent. He's got the legs and the mobility and whatnot. So I think he is QB1 but he also has this leadership presence to him too, where he lifts up guys. You see that on the sideline where, even like DeKel Crowdis during one practice, I don't know if he dropped it or he just didn't come up with the pass during one drill. And then, you see Billy kind of come up and go, hey, one more. And he picks him up, he makes the catch, and then even one, there's a play where, I think Mason dropped one and Billy comes over, daps him up. They're all good. So you see that part, the leadership out of Billy Edwards Jr. early on. With Danny O'Neill, I would argue outside of Carter Smith, probably the most mobile quarterback out of everybody. We've seen what Carter Smith can do. He's still pretty raw as a quarterback, and he's still learning the quarterback position at the college level. Danny O'Neill, has that starting experience from San Diego State. I thought he started to flourish a lot more late in spring. And you're seeing him and Hunter Simmons are going back and forth during with two reps, with the second team so far during what we've seen in fall camp. And I think O'Neill has that spring experience with this offense. So you see him making a little bit better decisions, but also he's more comfortable in the run game too, where he's able to have that little bit of scrambling ability. He had that dual threat type of action when he was in high school in Indianapolis or in Indiana. So I do feel that, I'm a fan of Danny O'Neill now. Like, you see him make the progressions in the spring. It might have been a little bit tougher sledding early on in the first, practice or two there during the spring, but you're seeing him also step up. And I think, I feel it's still early on. We're 5 practices into fall camp, but I think he's positioned himself well early on.
Justin, the quarterback room looks like it's in a pretty good spot. I mean, at least right now with what we've seen so far. Your thoughts on week 1?
Yeah, actually, I was going to throw a question back to him real quick, and I was just going to say after the first week, and I realized the offense is different, do you feel like, and this can be for Billy and the rest of the quarterbacks, do you feel like they've taken to it a little bit better than what we were seeing the last couple, fall camps? Because it seems like it was pretty hit or miss the last couple of years. And my feel for this so far has been that it feels like things are more cohesive as a group, not to mention Billy's been pretty locked in so far, but I'm just curious what your guys' thoughts are.
Coco, go ahead.
Cool. Okay. Yeah, no, I mean, I do feel this group, there is a clear-cut starter. I know back in 2023, Tanner Mordecai was the starter because you had Nick Evers and you had Braden Locke, both are redshirt freshmen that didn't get much action, if at all, during their first years on their respective campuses. But I do feel this group, I think they're, you see them working with Kenny Guyton right before they go into the team sessions and whatnot. I think that, there is a cohesive, I think Guyton does a good job with them and what they're trying to do and working on fundamentals, and they're working on certain things with, before they head into the team drills or the working on the, before they head team periods, they have these individual periods and they're working with the receivers or other running backs for that matter. So I do feel like it's a good room. I think it's a good group. To coin a phrase from who was it? The beloved Graham Mertz back when he was a freshman in 2019. They're good eggs, is how I would put it. In that regard, for those that don't know on the beat, like there was one practice in the spring of 19 where they started a running joke where all four of the quarterbacks said good egg or said some wording of good egg in there. But this is a group that I think with the offense, and there's going to take time for Hunter Simmons to grow into the role because he's still learning because he was at Southern Illinois in the spring, right? And he had a I'd say a pretty bad interception today where he floated. He made the right. It looked like he made the right read, but he just floated the ball right up there a little bit too much. And Emilio Agard came up with an interception there. But even like Carter Smith, where you see the intangibles with him, you see athleticism, and I think the group's growing, and I think this is a good group for this offense.
Swagger is the one word that I came away from Big Ten Media Days with Billy Edwards, is he just has a swagger about him, which I really wanted to see. And I feel like hearing the things from you guys and other people that we've read about all week is the swagger looks to be there, and that's the leadership. And he's got the ability to, he's used to this before. He knows how to transfer into a school and make waves and to take control. And I give the man a lot of credit for doing that. Nick, we'll come to you on the next position, running backs. We've talked a lot about this, Nick. Dylan Jones. It was kind of an understood situation that Dylan Jones was going to be taking kind of the next big step and be that guy. And it kind of seemed to bear out this week a little bit. It's certainly one of the strongest position units on the team. You and I heard Luke Fickell in person talk about that. Tell me your thoughts on what you saw. And I really want to get an understanding of you of where is that rank, the ranking? Is Dylan Jones really that guy? And are you seeing him being the next guy out of Wisconsin?
Yeah, I really appreciate it, Rajiv. I obviously asked Fickell about that when we were out west together, and he doesn't say things just to say things. So the excitement was very clear. Now, from what I saw this week, I think it's a great room, which I'm writing about right now as well, and some takeaways. I think Jones is the guy, if there is a guy right now. I mean, it's tough to really just kind of describe some of the things he's shown, the way he hits the hole, his explosiveness, the energy every single rep, his physicality. I think he's grown in pass pro. I think he can do it all. I think this room has multiple NFL backs, and I think he's a surefire one in my eyes. Really, the rest of the room, I think early in the week, Yakimelli was getting a decent amount more reps than Dupree. Not like a ton, but, you were kind of just keeping tabs a little bit, and it seemed like he was getting a little bit more. I think Dupree showed his flashes and then a lot more throughout the week, and things evened out. So I really think it's like Jones 1A, Yak and Dupree are very close. And then Ituka obviously isn't going to be at that level, but again, he's a young man that brings it every single time. Pass pro, when he gets a touch, going against the threes, whatever that might look like. So Rajiv and Justin, I smile because Coco, I've said on this show multiple times, I feel like this is going to be a classic Wisconsin RB room. And now just seeing it with our own eyes, I'm feeling validated and excited for that room under the tutelage of Devin Spohl.
Justin, we've talked a lot about this room, and I think things were confirmed this week. Are you feeling like ridiculously strong about this group right now?
I think my biggest positive to this is that it's for once we feel like we can weather a storm if something does happen, if somebody gets dinged up. You have bodies that you can put out there, and it's not just we're throwing a body at it. It's we have somebody talented that can go in there and actually do something positive with it. They go 4 deep. I think all 4 of the guys are capable of going out there providing quality reps. And I think you can legitimately say that if any of the top 3 guys go in there, you feel like they can potentially go out there and do something special. And that's something that we haven't had in a while.
Coco, any thoughts on the running back room that you had that you want to share with us from what you saw out there? What was some of your perspective?
Yeah. I mean, Dylan Jones, I think he's really well made for this type of offense with the wide zone. He can get downhill. He's assertive with his cuts, and he gets downhill, and he's also physical. I think that's a big thing. I would say the one thing he's caught passes out of the backfield, but I do feel that someone like a Darian Dupree, they complement each other in this backfield work really well. And shout out Ryan Herrings, by the way. I'll see you tomorrow in Platteville. But you have with this backfield some complementary features, which is really nice. And it's what you've seen on other type of Badger backfields that could be productive. Now, the key is that this group still, Darian Dupree, he emerges the number 2 back, and he had over 300 yards rushing, and then he also had another nearly 120 receiving. But he's still young, and really he flashed, but there's still not as much experience. But and then you have Dylan Jones, who looks the part right now in camp, but he still hasn't, he played in the game against Purdue with the game well in hand. But K. Yakimelli has the opportunity too, to really step up. So I feel like right now, Jones could be, maybe again, we're not naming starters. We're 5 days in, but you see the Jones get the carries, and then you see Dupree and Yakimelli also alternating between first team carries early on in this fall camp. And, Dupree is the all-purpose back. So there's that complementary feature there. And I don't know if it's even arguably, but I feel like he is the best pass catcher out of that group. And I feel they could use him around the field if they really want to, because he did that at Chicago Mount Carmel, especially in the slot. But Yakimelli too has that burst. He can catch the ball out of the backfield. He's powerful. His pass blocking, he can hold up. He's dense, but he's strong and fast. And it's one of those groups that it's a good sign for Wisconsin, especially with what they want to do in the run game.
Yeah, my feel for this, having kind of coming into the season, was that at least me personally, I felt like it was going to be Dylan Jones number 1, Yakimelli kind of being like the backup for his style, and then Dupree kind of being like that James White type. We're going to kind of throw him in there as a change of pace, use him in the passing game a little bit more. But I view him as a guy who's a little bit more of a scat back. I think that undersells him. There's people that I've heard talk about him as a gadget back, and I'm like, he's not really that. He's got some James White to him, where you look at him and he's just different than the other 2 guys who are more one-cut backs, and he's more of a guy that you can send out there. And I think send out there and have him do something a little bit different. Obviously, I think he's going to be used a lot in the slot, because I think that is really going to make some teams uncomfortable with his ability in space. So I'm really interested to see what happens this year with him.
Right.
Sorry
about that. No, I was saying one thing about Dupree, like today during practice, that was the most assertive he looked running the ball, because he can run, like you said, he's not just a gadget back or like a all-purpose, or he's an all-purpose back where he actually has that ability to run between the tackles. And I think that's what's really, to me, stood out today, where he had a nice 30-yardish type run off the right side that he caught the edge on. And then he also, he ran it down the middle. He's not afraid of contact either. I would say Jones maybe has a little bit more physicality, but with his running style, but Dupree, has that to his game as well. And so I think that's what's also really just intriguing about Dupree. But like I said, these guys, even Gideon Atuka, who gets downhill, and he's been getting second team reps during fall camp. He's interesting. I mean, they have 4 backs that could contribute in my eyes if they were called upon this year.
Yeah, it's definitely a refreshing thing. And Hooker says this, having 3 backs to be confident in is refreshing. John Schweigel asks, will we have 2 backs playing at the same time today? And Ryan, our friend Ryan Herrings responded. Actually, he's also practiced. If you haven't seen what Ryan's doing on Locked On Badgers, you're doing yourself a disservice. Go check that out, of course. And I'm sure many of you do, as he's fantastic. He said Badgers showed 2 backs in the gun today, a lot of Yak and Dupree together. And this is one thing I really liked, Dupree and Tretch. That's nice to see as well. So, yeah, a lot of good stuff coming out of that room. Speaking of Tretch, let's go to wide receivers. Coco, we'll start with you on this one. Kind of just give me your overall take from the week. So maybe some guys that looked good, some guys that you were surprised by in that room. What was your overall take on wide receivers?
Yeah, and so far, Vinny Anthony leads the way, and the ability for him, the veteran, he's a senior now, and I feel he's established a really good rapport with Billy Edwards Jr. At quarterback. You saw that on a couple of throws. I think it was yesterday, where they hit on some deeper type intermediate throws, which is what you want out of this type of offense that Jeff Grimes wants, where he has that wide zone rushing scheme paired with a downfield passing attack to keep defenses honest. And so there's some positive signs there. You've seen good things from Chris Brooks and from Jaden Ballard at times. And I feel those three, I think are, those three along with Tretch, Kekahuna, those guys, I think, along with I'll throw in Tyrell Henry too. I think he's really made a nice impact. Both Tretch and Tyrell have been able to show the ability to not just catch the ball in different areas of the field, but they're also able to run and be utilized in that type of motion too. So I think there's legit 5 guys behind them. I'm wondering, what happens with Joe Griffin Jr., Eugene Hilton, who's had some good catches, but maybe hasn't made quite the noise during spring ball early on, but doesn't take away from what he's done. But you have those guys. Kyan Barry Johnson had a good day, I thought, today in some one-on-one situations when they were throwing goal balls, 9 routes, and he saw the ball skills there. So there is a lot, so I think this is a good group. I think there's 5, I feel there's 5 that, for sure that have game experience that will be able to, contribute in that fashion. I'm intrigued to see what else is going to be, who else steps up and who's going to be in a 2-deep type of situation, come game week in just about 3 weeks.
It's certainly one of the more intriguing positions as far as that 2-deep goes, and how many of the young guys, whether it's Hilton or not. Nick, what can you add your perspective there from the wide receiver? Anything to add to what Coco mentioned?
Yeah, I know we've got a lot, to hit on. I thought Jake described a lot of it super well. So I would just add, Vinny Anthony, again, I smile because he's a guy that I feel like I've been ahead of the curve on. I think he's leveled up even a little bit further. So I think there's going to be a lot of excitement there. I still think he's a pro, to be quite honest. So I think that legitimate one, like Jake said, looking for Ballard to maybe get some more opportunities this next week, not in terms of reps. Obviously, he's up there, but just in terms of some of the playmaking that he displayed in the spring. And then honestly, guys, I'm at the point, and Jake alluded to it, obviously it was out there in some of the highlights on the Badger football account today too. But I'm at the point that if, Kyan Barry Johnson can be a little bit more consistent with his hands, because he had a couple drops earlier in the week. If those can become, as the coaches say, like every play, every day guys, I think he could be, and I do mean this, a future star here, because his route running is up there already with the best in the team. If you watch the one-on-ones like Jake alluded to today, I'm talking about earlier in the week too, he dusts guys. Like, he loses guys, whether it's a true freshman or a redshirt sophomore. His route running is among the best. I think that there's a reason that the staff and, some of the veteran leaders have put a lot of time in with him this last year and a half. And I'm really intrigued to see what he can do. Should be excited about what Tretch can do in this offense too.
Justin, your thoughts on the receiver, and also kick it to tight end as well. Start us off with tight end. Give us your thoughts on what you read there.
Yeah, I would say that from a wide receiver standpoint, I feel pretty good about the group. We were high on Vinny from the start. We felt like he was going to be an NFL type guy this year. You can see it in the spring showcase. Like, when you watch him move out on the field, it's deliberate. He knows exactly what he's trying to do on a certain route, and he just does it very crisp. There's nobody else on the roster that I look at that's as clean as him when you watch them out there doing things on the field. I think that I need to see Ballard do it. I'm very high on him. Somebody just threw in the chat, who's the fastest Badger? I would say, at least in my opinion, it's probably him. I know the GPS stuff. Somebody said that he's been in like the mid 23 range, which I haven't seen anybody on that level since probably Taylor here. So, other than that, Eugene has been flashing. I've seen you guys throwing out your stuff with the consistent day in, day out. He's been a guy that kind of shows out. He had a catch that was put up by the team the other day. Impressive catch. He's a guy, I just think that the floor is so high. Like, he's got so much that he came in polished on, that he is going to be a guy that's going to move up the ladder quicker, because he's already been doing most of this stuff for years. Like when you have a dad that can kind of be like, this is what I'm doing at the NFL level, it changes things. So I look forward to him. He's going to get reps. What level of reps, we'll see. He's a guy who may find his way if he can be productive into finding a bigger role for himself. Beyond that, there's a lot of guys who are kind of in show me. I think Tretch, we feel pretty good about him, but I think he's got some things he's got to prove on the field. I think he's going to be productive this year. I think KBJ's got a chance to be a guy who can at least push. I'm hoping that he'll be the punt return guy, simply because I think you need to find a role for him to kind of get him, like make him feel a part of things. Because having a guy like Tretch right in front of him and they have very similar skill sets scares me a little bit with the way the portal works. And then other than that, I think, Henry, I've heard from quite a few people that he's at a strong camp. Diving into tight ends real quick, I would say it sounds like Lance Mason has come in and has hit the ground kind of running, where we don't feel like he's a guy who is feeling his way out as much as we thought we might. And that's a positive to me. They badly need him to be a guy who can be a receiving threat. That's no shade on Ashcraft. I just think Mason is being brought in to be that guy who can be more of the split out wide receiver type tight end. And Ashcraft's more of your inline guy.
Yeah, and I tell you, when we were Big Ten Media Days and Nick and I were talking to Billy Edwards, I got that sense right away. I was surprised and happy to hear him talk about Lance Mason and specifically the route running, the receiver threat that he brought. And because, I will say for most of the summer, Justin, you and I were talking about how like Ashcraft was really going to be the guy after Cozio left. And even when Mason came in, we weren't really sure, but it's nice to see that he's popped in there. Nick, I'll come to you on tight ends and we're going to move over to offensive line. Anything else to add there on your thoughts on Mason? Do you feel like he's really going to kind of emerge as that tight end one at this point?
Yeah, I know there's a lot, talk about O-line, like you said, Rajiv, so I'll make it pretty quick. We know I'm usually optimistic, so sometimes maybe somebody doesn't show me enough, right? Like I'm a little higher. I'm not sure that I thought we would see this much from Lance Mason already.
That's great.
And watching back things from Letton, hearing from Coach Fickle, like outwardly excited again, as Jake and I saw, that would have been Saturday. Like this kid, it's hard not to be impressed. It sounds like maybe the opposite of kind of how Cozio handled, the jumping up and things and kind of some of the increase in competition, that type of stuff. I think Mason has done everything right. I've kind of gotten the sense that Billy and the offense is really not rallied, but really connected with this transfer, which is always good. And then I'll just mention, he flashed good amount in the spring, but Emmett Bork, is a guy that an in-state guy I know Jake and I have talked to, known for a while, that could be a dude at tight end going forward.
Let's switch gears to offensive line. Certainly one of the biggest storylines going into camp. We've seen a lot of good content coming out about guys like about Corey and Colin Cubberly, in addition to the guys like Davis Heinzen and everybody. Coco, let's break it down as far as the biggest question, left tackle. Is Brunner going to be kicked out? Is Brunner going to stay at left guard? And then we're going to have Heinzen out there. Is Mandel involved? The right guard then gets involved. What did you see all week? What looks like is, as of now, is really going to be the starting line?
Yeah, and it's still early, so it's always hard where, and also Wisconsin doesn't necessarily like us trying to name starters after 5 days. So I will, it's part of some of the guidelines that we have received. So I'll make sure I adhere to that. I will say, today we saw Davis Heinzen at left tackle, Joe Brunner left guard, Jake Renfro center, Emerson Mandel back at first team right guard, and then Riley Mullman locking down the right tackle spot like he has for how many years now. So this is that was today's combination for first team. But yesterday we saw Colin Cubberly bump up to first team right guard reps, and so going back to like left tackle though, I think right now that I know there was a day where Joe Brunner got more reps at left tackle and slid out, and they kind of just flip flopped on the left side of the line there. But I still feel this is my 2 cents. I feel Joe Brunner is best at left guard, and and then I think Emerson Mandel is still a guard. I know he played some right tackle last year. I know he received some reps last year at that spot, but it's I do feel just with his body type and just, his experience so far that guard fits Mandel better. And so, but then, I think Heinzen, I think he's done okay. He's still learning, and developing within this offense. He wasn't here during the spring. But I think it's okay to say like the loss of Kevin Haywood is substantial for this offense, especially with this type of NFL type of scheme where it's a pro style, NFL style, however you want to call it. I feel like there should be like shots for us every time we say NFL style. I feel like I've done it a lot. I could use some, not tonight. I'll use one tomorrow because we have off on Tuesday. But you have, I think Heinzen, I think, is going to get every chance. I think they said that he's, I think they're going to, he's going to have the chance to win that left tackle spot. And I think, right guard will sort itself out, which is, I think, the other question I think it's a pretty big, it's not as big as left tackle because that's Billy Edwards' blind side. I also hope that, if you're a Wisconsin fan, that, it may not be a pure replacement for Kevin Haywood in terms of what he could be and be the cornerstone of the offensive line for years to come. But you can always supplement with like a chip from a tight end or a chip from a running back that can help out that way. But I also think that right guard spot's been very interesting to watch, because we've seen maybe two guys get the reps at first team left tackle reps, but then you're looking and you're like, oh gosh, like, you're seeing multiple guys like Kerry Kodanko, Mandel, Cubberly work in there. And even today, JP Benchwell, who's been working at some of the tackle spots, got second team right guard reps.
You've got 3 locked on starters. Mallman's going to be, Renfro's going to be there, and Brunner's going to be there. Where Brunner is, of course, is the thing. I beat the drum all week. I've said it on this show. I've said it on Ryan's show. I want Brunner to play left guard because he's a fantastic left guard, and he is the guy that would dictate our running game and can dictate. And I hope he does stay there. But I also understand if Brunner has to be pushed out because, if Heinzen's not working out, if Billy's getting hit on the blind side, then you got to do what you got to do. But I really, really hope that it'll stay like that. Justin, and I feel like, Justin, you agree with me on this. Like, you want Brunner to stay at left guard, right?
I don't like weakening the rest of the line for the sake of the left tackle position. And I don't think anybody's going to be a perfect fit there, but I do think that I feel really strongly about the other 4 spots. Like, I think we're going to have somebody good at any of those. What I will say is I think part of this is also being driven. This may just be my perspective on it, but I feel fairly confident that if they're going to go to somebody else being at left tackle, if Heinzen gets hurt or something, it's probably going to be Brunner. So my gut instinct is that he might be getting reps there simply because we want to know we have him comfortable in that position should that happen.
Nick, one of the other big positions, of course, is defensive line. We're going to switch over to the defense, and I know that you might have to go, and if you need to drop off, Nick, please feel free. Defensive line has always been that thing, right? We got a lot bigger. We know that. I'm dying to hear more. I've read all your stuff all week. I've read a ton of stuff, and I've heard mixed things. And I've heard some concerns. I've heard some good things. I want your perspective on what you saw out there all week. Does this line look better than it has in the past? Is it a function of the offensive line being really good? Like, it's obviously they're going up against good competition. What is your initial takes? We've got size on the inside now, and I'm hoping that that's going to actually take place. Did you see that taking shape this week?
Yeah, Rajiv, a few things to add. And I've got time for at least one more position group. I appreciate it. I just want to say super quick, because it is kind of the position Justin and I text about the most. I will hit on D-line, obviously, but I just want to add quickly on O-line. Justin, I think, and I like what Jake said too, I think that right guard, I personally, I've watched the O-line and corners more than any position this week. I made a point of doing that, obviously with competitions. I think that whether it's Mandel or Cubberly at right guard, I think they're going to be situated pretty well. Like, I know you and I have both said we thought Mandel would be the higher ceiling play, and that was before we even talked a ton about Cubberly. But, Cubberly's a guy, it's just crazy to see how he's transformed a little bit. I saw him fall of 2023 at his school in New York, and now he looks like he's been in a Big Ten program for 4 or 5 years. It's only been a year and a half. I thought he was very solid on Saturday, Jake. I think you would agree with that. It seemed like Coach Pickle agreed with that, to be quite honest. I think Heinzen has done well enough. There was one day I do think, obviously there are growing pains, but transitioning Rajiv to that D-line, I think it has been solid in the pass game. I do think there's still room to grow, and I know we were talking about it off air right before this because at times last year we saw a lot of running success, and obviously that led to a unit that struggled to defend the run. Certainly in some games later in the season, I'm not at that point. I think the D line / edge group, I will throw them in, has been phenomenal in the past at times. But I think we'll probably look for, yes, next week, more plays from guys like a Perkins, like a Suggs, even Jamel Howard, because I liked what he was doing in indie drills to see how they can come along a little bit further, kind of stopping some of that run. But I just will add, this O-line and the offense is damn good in the run game when executed well. And I think we saw a ton of that. I'm sure Jake would agree from Thursday on. I think early on that was growing a little bit, but the rest of the week. So while I'm not going to say it's been perfect, I'm not saying that at all. I will also give credit to the offense because there's a reason that I'm finding myself writing 3-4 times a day. Spalding loved this. You could see Coach Blas loved this. Kenny Guyton was super pumped about this. So I think it's a balance of both, Reggie.
Coco, I'll come to you. I want you to kind of switch gears a little bit to the pass rush as well. Mason Rieger's a guy we're going to talk about. But anything else you have on the defensive line, and give us your thoughts on some of the outside linebackers and what some of those pass rushers were able to do.
Yeah, I think the good thing with this defensive line is you saw I know Pro Football Focus I think had some credited snaps where there are 3 guys that got over 300 or 400 snaps last season. That contributed to Wisconsin giving up 200.2 yards rushing per game in the final 5 games, and they're all losses, which 12 total rushing touchdowns, and that's due to injury with James Thompson Jr. among other things. They're younger guys. Dylan Johnson was starting to emerge, but that's a lot to ask of a first-year freshman that way. But you see the depth of this line where they're having multiple combination of guys. You getting guys even like Brandon Lane, in Barton were part of a first team combination during spring. And so there could be 6-7 guys that could rotate with for the defensive line this year, which would be huge. And the one thing too is that the last thing I'll say about the D-line, I don't know how many are actually going to play, but there are 8 guys on that fall camp roster from the defensive line that weigh 300 or more pounds. And if you include JVR Suggs, that may be, he says it'll listed 299. I don't know how much that is right now during fall camp with, obviously the heat and maybe some water weight, but you're looking at, a very, a built up defensive line. And that's a great thing that Wisconsin did during this offseason that you have to give them credit for, is that they realized they needed to get bigger and longer on the athletic front, on the defensive front, I should say. And so some of those guys that you thought were going to be defensive linemen like Corey Walker or Michael Gardner, they're listed as outside linebackers because they do work more on the edge, and they are underneath the tutelage of Matt Mitchell. And so honestly and I haven't even gotten to Mason Rieger, who's kind of built like a Greek statue that's like 6'5", 250-ish, right? 6'4", 6'5", 250-ish. And he has been the name to know early on the defensive. Yeah, and Rieger has been really good where he's had this he's making TFLs, he's getting pressure off the edges. He made, and today, the one blemish I thought Dupree had was Rieger came in and just punched the ball out, in during red zone 11-on-11 period. And, it led to a defensive recovery. But that's the type of energy that Rieger brings. And you can tell and he wasn't like a huge pass rusher at Louisville anyways. The biggest year he had was in 2023 where he had 5 sacks and 6 tackles for loss, but that's more than what anyone had at Wisconsin last season on the defense. And so for me, Rieger is kind of been the big name. You've seen Sebastian Cheeks and Darrell Peterson get some pressures at times. And, I think Cheeks, and Rieger could be some good pass rushing options off the edge. Tyrese Fearbry, the transfer from Kentucky, has a little bit of that pass rushing, along with Nick Clayton, who, like Hilton, right, where they're making plays during this fall camp. It just, maybe we're not seeing it as much compared to what we saw in the spring. And but he's still getting pressure. Clayton had a good pressure today and whatnot. Brady Collins praised him during Squat Fest, saying he ran, at over 230 pounds, like a 4.59 40. and you're seeing the effort in the weight room there, which, again, first-year player, it's hard to ask a player like that. You have to have like a Nick Herbig to do that, but you're seeing a guy, that's putting forth that effort early on. And if they, we'll see how it goes, but this is a deep group too. I'm sure I'm missing some names that Nick can fill in if I'm missing any, but it's a deep group, but like I said, Reiger, I would say Peterson, I would say right now, Cheeks would be the three that stand out in terms of getting in the backfield.
Every year, well, the last couple of years at least, I've certainly been someone who's thrown a little shade towards Daryl Peterson. I always sometimes feel like it's difficult to watch sometimes during season, but man, the guy gives so much effort, and every single fall, every single spring, every single fall camp, he keeps being a name that you guys write about. Justin, I want to get your thoughts on the entire D-line, pass rushers, and then Nick, we're going to come to you to talk about pass rushers and anything else on defense that you want to hit on. But Justin, give me your thoughts on the line so far.
Well, I think the biggest thing for me from the defensive line standpoint is you have to look at it from the context of we're not looking for great. We're not even looking for good necessarily. We're looking for improvement. If they can be average as a defensive line, it's a massive improvement over where they were last year. And I think people need to understand that when we look at this. But they've also got options this year, which is something that they didn't have. Like last year, you had to keep putting guys out there who were faltering because you had no one to turn to. And this year, if somebody is just not having a good day, you have multiple bodies that you can put out there to see if you can shake it up a little bit to get something more going. And I think that that's the biggest thing to me. And I also think you have some size. Like, regardless of us being able to run the ball fairly consistently so far in this fall camp, I don't believe that these guys are getting shoved 7 yards downfield like we were watching at the end of last year. I trust that it's good blocking, but these guys are holding up and putting effort in there, which to me makes a big difference, because if they can't move up to their blocks, that means the linebackers are going to be free to flow a little bit more and stem some of the runs off a little bit. And I think that that's the biggest thing that I look at from this standpoint is people need to stop thinking that we're going to have a top 10 unit. Like realistically, the goal is to just be improved. And I think that we all feel pretty good about that possibility that things are going to move in that direction. I will say from a Reiger standpoint, I actually think that he's being undersold a little bit, and I don't think that this is necessarily how people viewed him, but that last year at Louisville, I think he had 5 sacks in 10 games, and he also was playing on a bum knee. So I do think that there's some upside there, that if he can be healthy and be who he is, that you might be able to get a guy who can get to 7-8 sacks. But we're not going to see a Leo Chanel, a Herbig type double-digit guy, I don't think, out of him. But I do think the biggest part of what's important about him is his intensity, his attitude, and his approach is something that I feel will really rub off on the other young guys. And hopefully you can get that built in as the type of culture and type of attitude going forward that the young talent has moving forward, so that you have guys that are going to be realizing this is how hard you need to play every down if you want to be a star.
I'm very much wanting this group, this defensive front, to be a lot better. And I'm just going to say, I am optimistic we're going to be better on the line for sure. To me, that's clear. We've got a lot bigger. There's, as you mentioned, Justin, there's a lot more depth there. But at the last year's camp, we saw similar things. We saw the running game looking really good. We saw, okay, they're going to be great. The defensive line, though, it's just I'm a little bit concerned that we might be overselling how good this new group of 300-pounders can be. I desperately want them to be great, because nothing works behind them if that doesn't work as well as it needs to. Nick, I want to come to you on anything else defensive related, whether it's inside linebacker, safeties. Obviously, we're going to talk about A-guard a little bit too. Give me anyone else there. Anything else you really want to talk about from a defensive standpoint that stuck out to you this week?
Yeah, I appreciate it, Rajiv, and I'll probably hop off for a first hot meal today after this. But, a few things. I think that, first off, Reiger could be a star. I wasn't sure what we would see this week, Jake and company, and every single day, if I wanted to, I obviously try not to repeat the same name every day. If I wanted to put him on the standouts every single day, that would have been validated. He's been a star, tackles for loss, like Jake said. Obviously, the pass pressure, Justin, you're correct that was something the staff loved about him when he was healthy prior. So I do think that has translated. From a personal standpoint, how can you not be happy for somebody that has, gotten hurt so much and dealt with so much, and now it seems like, you cross your fingers, you get through this healthy. I think he's going to elevate that room. I think Fearby was actually a few flashes for me the first couple of days, so I think he's a guy that will play. JVR Suggs, to me, flashed a little bit more in the first couple of days than I saw in the spring. Brandon Lane had a good, really, really good Saturday, which was nice to see. Obviously, has played a lot of football throughout his career at a couple different places. And then I will just note, Rajiv, the inside linebacker room. I've said it. I want to say on our last show before this camp, I love seeing both of you guys smile. The O-line, I believe, from the class of 24 and 25, and then the inside linebackers. I'm not sure you will find better position groups that are suited better. Yeah, this year, right? You think there are going to be some NFL guys, but looking forward, when you're talking about Mandel, Coverly, and others, of course, Haywood on offense, and then linebacker, guys, Cooper Catalano has gone from a guy that I think was a really amazing, obviously high school player, somebody that flashed in the spring, to, hey, how are we going to get this guy on the field, to make sure already? Because he is, to me, I know we're not, making official predictions or anything, Jake, but he's been pretty well entrenched within that second group at linebacker. So whether it is rotationally with them, with Garrison Soliday and some of the other guys you see there often, and Taryn Turner, or special teams early on, that in-state guy from Germantown is going to be a long-term contributor for these Badgers.
Good stuff, man. Good stuff, Nick. Coco, coming to you. Any other defensive things, whether it's cornerback, safety, any other notes that you have on the defensive side of the ball?
Yeah, I mean, obviously the big thing, cornerback is trying to figure out what to do at boundary corner with Nazir Forcurin, given his situation and the cloudiness of, the overturning of the preliminary injunction, a couple weeks ago, and then now what he's doing, and then, obviously his filing of a lawsuit, according to reports, among other things. And so there's that. I mean, Emilio Agard had a good interception. It was, again, it was Hunter Simmons' throw. But he's also that was in second team reps, but he's got, him and Deani Hill are going back and forth with they're interchangeable right now with the first team defense in terms of reps there. And Hill obviously has more experience coming from Marshall and then Miami last season. And, you like both those guys. Ricardo Hallman, I think, has been really sharp. Every cornerback's going to have passes thrown, completed against them, but they've been really tough or they've been really good throws. Hellman almost came up with one, for instance, that was, Jaden Ballard made a really good catch and just got his arms a little bit further, stretch a little bit more, because that's how Ballard, Ballard's got that length on him. But you have, I would say, with the cornerback section, they have to figure out what's going to happen at that boundary spot. So I think Agard and Hill can do that, but you also, if there are injuries, who's going to step up behind them? And you have a couple of freshmen in Kairos Gaines and Jaimir Scott that, I know, they very well, I'm not saying play a lot, but you never know if there's going to be a role for them later in the season. And we'll see how they progress during fall camp. And if any freshman, for that matter, hit a wall, which it can very well happen. But those two young players have also been very interesting to watch, and I think have played well. They played well in the spring. And then safety, I mean, I even forgot about Jameer Latimer, who I think is a great nickelback. And he can cover, he can get in the backfield. He's very versatile in that. And so I think Wisconsin found a really good transfer in Latimer from Jacksonville State. And then safety, Austin Brown, Preston Zachman, really good, experienced veterans. And then you have, I think, the two transfers they brought in, and Matt Young and Trainer. Those guys both provide something to this defense that gives them a little, maybe they could, if they need to, do some things, or if Austin Brown would ever need to go back down into the slot. Well, I think those two players could help step up and help, and not, you won't have to have an effect of keeping the safeties at the safety spot. There's some flexibility there and whatnot. But yeah, I think if they can solve what's happening at boundary corner, I think that secondary can be pretty good.
Justin, other final thoughts on the defense before we switch to our, you're good, Nick, if you need to drop off, before we go to our lightning superlatives here at the end of the show.
Yeah, I think the longer this goes on, I've been really high on Agard, obviously, since he was in high school. I was, from a coverage standpoint, there's not a recruit that I've watched that looks sharper than him from a technique standpoint. There's guys that have more physical tools, and I don't think he's a slouch there, but I've never seen somebody that sits on top of people like he does in coverage. And I am maybe one of the people that maybe I shouldn't be as comfortable with him out there this year, but I feel good about him. I honestly think that he's going to be – I think he'll be solid no matter what. And I actually think there's some upside there for him if it clicks, where he might become really good already this year.
Yeah, I mean, I think he could be good too. The depth of the room is obviously a concern. I mean, without Forkern, but I've heard a lot of people say like, the Forkern thing. Well, it'd be good if it was, should he really be allowed to play? Should we be worrying about it right now, or should we be worrying about football? My take is, let's try to get him back, because while I actually agree that in reality, if he doesn't get to play, I'm okay with that, because that just means the NCAA can enforce some rules, so that's fine. But at the same time, selfishly, I'm gonna want him to play, which would be amazing. All right, let's finish the show here on this, guys. We're already 56 minutes. Lightning superlative. So we're gonna make this quick rapid fire. Coco, we'll start with you. We're gonna go camp star, position group that you feel better about and strong about, position group that you still have some questions about, and then someone that no one's talking about. So lead us off. Camp star. I think this is probably a pretty clear one, but who's your camp star?
Yeah, Mason Reiger. I think that's the easy one. And I don't even know if it's close right now. It's just the consistent pressure. It's getting the TFLs. It's getting would-be sacks. It's creating havoc for the offense, and I think he gets my vote right now.
Yeah, I completely agree. Rieger, definitely Rieger. I've heard it said many ways by multiple people, but I'm going to go Rieger as well. Justin, are you in agreement there?
Yeah, I would agree. Everything I've heard about him so far from everyone that's seen him live has said he was all over the place. He's just been a problem. So Justin, been really consistent.
Justin, we'll come to you first on the next one. Position group you feel better about now than you did pre-camp?
Oh, man. Probably the edge guys. I think that we had some concerns there. We were curious if Rieger was going to be available to play. I wanted to see if Cheeks would take a step, because something that's undersold, people don't realize or want to consider the fact that he was switched positions last year from inside linebacker to the edge. And that's a change. Like, his responsibilities and a lot more pass rush than what was required at inside linebacker. So he was basically getting by on physical tools. And I think that you have some other bodies in there, like Fierbury. He showed burst in the spring. He was a guy, I don't know if he always transitions that, but he has quickness off the edge. And then Clayton, I mean, you'll be hard pressed to find somebody that's higher on him than I am. And I think that he's got all the talent in the world to potentially be a guy in pass downs to come in there and be a problem off the edge.
Coco, position group you feel better about?
I'd say I was going to say the edge, because I thought, but I'll say a little different. I'll say tight ends. I think Lance Mason. It's something that
I agree. That's another good one.
Yeah, it's nothing against either Ashcraft or Aker for that matter, Jackson Aker for that matter. Where Ashcraft, I think, has caught good. He's still getting first team reps. And they run a lot of 12 personnel. This is going to be an offense that runs a lot of 12 personnel. They ran a lot of 12 personnel in Phil Longo's scheme, which was interesting last year. I guess it's probably the nicest way to put it. But you have those guys. I think with Ashcraft, you have Aker, who's like the fullback, but he can do more than a fullback with his frame. Yeah, he's 6'1"-ish, but he's also 250, 247-ish. So he's got a bigger frame to him. But I like what Ashcraft can do as well. And then, Mason just adds on that. There's a pass catching ability to him. He takes pride in his blocking. They're asking them a lot to do a lot within this offense. That's a little different. That's different from last year. And they're physical. And I think that's a good part that I think you're going to see from this tight end group. I think it's also going to help recruit the position even better going forward.
Yeah, I'm with you, tight end. Everything I've heard about Lance Mason really has impressed me and made me feel a lot better about everything because I have been concerned about it. So that's where I'll go there. All right, last two rapid fires real quick here. Jake, we'll start with you. Position group that you feel like maybe you still have some questions about after week 1 of camp.
Yeah, I think it's offensive line. I think that's the easy one, and it's just due to the fact of the number of combinations. Because, like I said, even trying to figure out who could be that swing tackle if they need somebody right now. And even Barrett Nelson's not practicing, Kevin Haywood's not practicing. They're both on the sideline right now. So who's going to step up as swing tackle if something does happen that way, which would be really bad. But Davis Heinzen, has gotten the most, I would say, first team reps at left tackle. The right guard needs to be suited up. Like, how many more combinations will they have before they start kind of trying to find, maybe this is the week that they try to figure out things and then try to solidify the line going forward, or do they, that might be one way, or do they extend it out another week, until they get back to Madison from Platteville and maybe they go there. But the nice thing is all these questions I have, hopefully we'll get some answers from AJ Blazik on Monday, because we talked to AJ. And that's going to be one of the questions we have is like, so how many accommodations do you want to try before you're like, okay, I've seen enough. When do you want to start trying to make sure the chemistry is down between the 5 that you think are going to start? And so that's going to be, I think it's I think it can be a strong group with what they have. It's just that left tackle spot's key, but also just, hey, who's going to be that guy at right guard?
Anything different from you, Justin?
I would say I will bump it to the opposite side and say defensive line. It's kind of a similar situation there. You want to see guys get locked in, and hopefully they just get more consistent over the course of this next week here, so that people start to see what they want to see, which is the defensive line sounding like they're going to be a solid line this year, which I think would make people feel a lot better about the year.
That's where I'm at. Defensive line is what I still want to see get a little bit stronger. Last question, gentlemen. Justin, we're here with you. We'll start with you there. Guy that no one really talked about, people aren't talking about, that you're more excited about, maybe like a rising star or someone that's surprised you this week.
I think you can go down the list in that tight end room and kind of look at some of the guys that are getting there. You got Tyler Janze jumping over. I was wondering who they were going to fit in that spot, because I thought about that. I'm like, where do they go forward after this, after Aker, if he's graduating this year? They don't really have a body type for that behind him. Everyone else is more of a traditional tight end. You obviously have a young guy coming in, but you want to get somebody ready, because if he gets dinged up, maybe you slide in a tight end back there. But who else is even playing that spot right now, Jake, besides Aker? Is it just Andy now?
Yeah, I mean, right now it'd be, Aker's doing more than just like what a traditional fullback would be doing.
He's all over the place.
But Jancy is still, like, I had asked Nate Letton about Jancy and that thing, and just, I'm trying to take a look and see if I can find it real quick, but which is great podcasting on my end, but so I won't do that. But basically he just said that, Jancy's been willing. He's been willing to do work. I have seen some good things from him, like on yesterday, where he had that ability to. There are a couple, like 2 series. One was with the second team. One was with the reserve offense, and like his blocks. And he got praised by Letton. He got praised by Cam Large, who works as a volunteer coach for the Badgers right now. And and so you saw that, but you also saw even today the speed where he was in the backfield as like a fullback type of thing. His speed and getting down into the hole and trying to find a blocker is huge. So, I would probably say like it's similar, but they're different body types too. Because remember, Aker is so much more. He's got the athletic build.
He's a man at this point.
Yeah, and
he's a big boy.
Yeah, he's older, and he's also he's 2 years older, but also he has that he has a huge track background as well. I guess for me, I've been trying to think about someone right now, and I think Catalano might be somebody, even though we've seen like Garrison Soliday get second team reps too. I like Catalano to the ball. I think that's something that knows for the ball, something that Mike Tressel had mentioned last week about Catalano that you saw towards the end of spring. But I know we've talked about Catalano before. I think one guy might be Antaron Turner, who, obviously an older guy, was at an FCS Western Carolina before coming to Wisconsin. But one of my main questions, and it's a smaller question, but it was one of my main questions heading into camp, was just, okay, who's going to back up Tackett Curtis and Christian Allegra? Because those guys look great with first team reps. You see the Tackett Curtis's speed and getting down there. Christian Allegro can blitz. We've seen that last year, but he can also rack up tackles. Okay, who's going to step up behind them? And, Turner might be, again, another underrated type of pickup on the transfer portal where he's got experience playing college football, and he has not looked out of sorts at that inside linebacker spot. And then on top of that, like I said, you can pair him with a Catalano. And, the one thing, too, that Mike Tressel had said, I forgot what the question was, but he kind of prefaced it by saying that they want, the entire two deep of defensive players to be comfortable with each other. He's not saying for the coaches. He's saying, can this two deep, can the second field safety come in, and can everyone still feel comfortable with him and trust him that they can run the defense the way? And that's a huge ask in college football today because of the transfer portal. You're not developing these guys like you used to, where and whatnot. So it's key that you bring in these transfers. Can you build that trust quick? And it's a different game that way than it was 5 years ago. So you've seen that. And I think Turner's done a good job at inside linebacker. And like I said, I'm high on Mason Post. I think he's good, but, Catalano has that spring ahead of him. And I think, that's an underrated signing for Wisconsin. They kept one of the best in the state, and he's the state's prep leading tackler of all time right now.
Tons of great information. We went a little long today. I've got to cut the show here because my daughter needs to go to bed, which is and we went way over what we had planned. But Jake Kocorowski, thank you so much for joining us. You're welcome back on the Bucky Report anytime. Justin, any final thoughts before we close the show?
Well, it's been a productive first week. I think we're headed in the right direction. Hopefully we'll hear some more good news about some of these positions solidifying this week. I think we will. I look forward to seeing anyone who stops down on Saturday for the open practice. I'll be down there. And, hope to see you guys there.
I will not be there, sadly, because I live way too far away. But you
can go to Indiana.
Right. I'm in Indiana right now. But, yes, we will be back again next week. We did hit Know Your Foe. Go check that out if you haven't seen it, from Ohio State this past week. We've got Maryland coming up this week. I'm going to hit Iowa soon, try to get them all wrapped up before the season starts. So, we'll always be back next Sunday night to talk more about practice and all things leading up to the 2025 season. Thank you for joining us. And as always, on Wisconsin.
On Wisconsin.
Thank you for listening. If you enjoy the show, subscribe to our YouTube channel at The Bucky Report or The Bucky Report Podcast from wherever you get your content. Until next time, on Wisconsin.